France is in turmoil after all the major parties, including literal communists, ganged up to lock populists out of power in their recent legislative elections, despite French populists winning by far the highest number of votes. Left-wing voters, of course, rioted. Apparently they riot whether they win or lose. They just like riots. The end result looks like roughly a third of seats going to the communists, the New People's Front, another one-third going to Macron's centrist Together party, and just a quarter of seats for the populists. Contrast this with the actual votes, where the populists won over 10 million votes, versus the People's Front getting 7 million and the centrists at just over 6.5 million. So by far the most popular party is now number 3 in seats and completely locked out of power. Democracy in action. This is actually becoming a pattern in Europe where establishment conservatives and socialists unite to lock out populists. Germany's been doing it for years against the AfD, along with Sweden, Belgium, Netherlands, PVV, and Spain's Vox Party. I mentioned recently how Republicans and Democrats would have dearly loved to lock out their insurgents, but alas, the existential threat of a split vote forced them to play ball. Of course, these lockouts disenfranchise populist voters, who are now the largest single voting bloc in many European countries, including France, and it does nothing to temper the policies that are driving voters to populism. The inflation, joblessness, crime, the corporatist oligopolies that feed on mass migration and taxpayer handouts, the environmental mandates that deliver $1,000 electric bills and wipe out farmers and rural communities. In fact, in France at least, these are set to get much worse, since it now seems Macron has made a deal with the devil, as his left-wing allies are demanding full implementation of their hard-left utopia. That includes massive state spending, a 90% income tax, a wealth tax on all assets, presumably including retirement accounts, price freezes of consumer goods, also known as shortages of consumer goods, and of course all the free food and housing that millions more migrants can stand. Of course, this is all quite expensive. As Danielle Lacaille wrote before the election, France was going to choose between debt, and way more debt. It looks like they chose way more debt. One study pegged the left's agenda at 6% of GDP, which would eclipse even Joe Biden's spending orgy. France's national debt is already bumping up against market limits, with French sovereign bond default instruments rising and ongoing tense negotiations with Brussels over France's out-of-control deficits. Keep in mind that 6% without accounting for what happens to jobs with a 90% income tax. Why would you continue running a business in France? And then what happens to public spending for all of those unemployed workers. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. Across the West, we're seeing wholesale voter rejection of Leviathan government. It's inflation, it's Sovietization of the economy, it's trammeling of traditional values and communities. But we're now in the reaction stage, the empire strikes back stage, after they've ignored, after they've laughed, and now they are fighting. It will be a losing fight. You don't solve voter unrest by doubling down, but things will get worse before they get better. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.